As you can see, we have just entered the hotel about which we have to Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea. And in a very special gesture, Prime Minister James Marape of Papua New Guinea received the Honorable Prime Minister at the airport. Prime Minister also received a 19-gun salute and a ceremonial guard of honor at the airport, besides a special traditional welcome reserved normally for the returning family members of that country was also accorded to the Honorable Prime Minister. And today, Prime Minister co-hosted with Prime Minister James Marape the third summit of the Forum for India-Pacific Island Cooperation, FIPIC. This is a unique platform that brings together India and 14 Pacific Island countries: Cook Islands, Fiji, Republic of Kiribati, Republic of Marshall Islands, Federated States of Micronesia, Niue, Republic of Nauru, Republic of Palau, Papua New Guinea, where the summit was held, Samoa, Solomon Islands, Tonga, Tuvalu, and Vanuatu. As you would all know and recall, FIPIC was launched in Fiji in 2014 during Prime Minister's visit to that country. It has helped deepen considerably our engagement, its scope, its breadth, and its intensity with the PIC countries across various domains and as per priorities which are set by the FIPIC countries. Today's summit was an opportunity for the PIC leaders to share their views on regional priorities and interest and on engagements with India in their space. There was an overwhelming sense of goodwill towards India and appreciation about India's role and of its engagement in the region. Prime Minister's interventions have been already made available to you. Among other things, he launched the Sustainable Coastal and Ocean Research Institute, SCORI, that is housed in the University of South Pacific in Suva, Fiji, and is supported by NCCR, the National Center for Coastal Research, Chennai. SCORI is designed to be a nodal center of excellence in coastal and ocean research and development, focusing on building capacity in some of the most pressing concerns and priorities of the Pacific region for the benefit of the people of the Pacific Island countries, such as the impact of climate change, about which pretty much every Pacific leader spoke in today's summit, on the marine ecosystem, marine pollution, coastal vulnerability to sea level rise, again something which was very prominently underlined by each of the PIC leaders, sea erosions, cyclones, and tsunamis. He also launched DWEPIC, or Data Warehouse for Empowering Pacific Island Countries, which has been developed by Indian Space Research Organization. DWEPIC portal hosts geospatial datasets and services, including satellite data, terrain data, climate and ocean thematic services, disaster services, and value-added services for access and utilization by the Pacific Island countries. This is part of the Space Technology Application Center that was announced by the Honorable Prime Minister in 2015. Today, Prime Minister also announced a 12-step action plan to strengthen India-PIC partnership. I will just enumerate key parts of that 12-step action plan. First, he announced a 100-bed regional super specialty hospital in Fiji, setting up of regional IT and cybersecurity training hub in Papua New Guinea, Sagar Amrit scholarships, 1,000 scholarships spread over the next 5 years, again across the range of areas that are priority for the Pacific Island countries. Jaipur Foot Camp to be organized in Papua New Guinea in 2023, and thereafter 2 camps annually in various countries of the Pacific. FIPIC SME Development Project was another key action point announced today. Solarization project for government buildings across the Pacific Island countries. desalination units for drinking water, supply of sea ambulances to the countries of the Pacific Island, setting up of dialysis units, setting up of 24/7 emergency helpline, setting up of Jan Aushadhi Kendras, again to make cost-effective and efficient pharmaceuticals available to the Pacific Island countries, and setting up of yoga centers. On the bilateral side, Prime Minister held meetings with the PNG Governor General, Sir Bob Dade, as well as with Prime Minister James Marape. They discussed ways and means to further strengthen their partnership across various sectors, including particularly trade and investment, on matters relating to cooperation in the field of health, capacity building and skill development, as also information technology. Documents on visa exemption for diplomatic and official passport holders, as well as on holding Foreign Office consultations, were also signed during the visit. During today's meetings in Papua New Guinea, Prime Minister was also bestowed with the honor of the highest civilian award of Papua New Guinea, the Grand Companion of the Order of Loguhu. This was conferred upon the Prime Minister by the Governor General in a special ceremony. Prime Minister and Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, James Marape, also launched a translation of the Tamil classic Tirukkural in the local Tokpisin language. The book is co-authored by linguist Mrs. Subha Sasindran and Mr. Sasindran Muthuvel, Governor of West New Britain, province of Papua New Guinea. Prime Minister also had a bilateral meeting with His Excellency Mr. Sitamani Rabuka, Prime Minister of Fiji. Discussion covered key sectors of cooperation, including capacity building, healthcare, climate action, renewable energy, agriculture, education, and information technology. On behalf of the Fijian President, His Excellency Mr. Ratu William Maivallili Kottinever, Prime Minister Rabuka bestowed Prime Minister Modi with the highest honor of the Republic of Fiji, the Companion of the Order of Fiji. Prime Minister Modi thanked the government and the people of Fiji for this honor and dedicated it to the people of India and to the generations of Fiji Indian community who have played a key role in the special and enduring bond between the two countries. Prime Minister also held brief meetings with other PIC leaders who attended today's summit. On the sidelines of India FIPIC summit, Prime Minister also met with His Excellency Mr. Chris Hipkins, the Prime Minister of New Zealand. The two leaders discussed ongoing bilateral cooperation initiatives and agreed to expand cooperation in various sectors, including trade and commerce, education, information technology, tourism, culture, sports, and people-to-people ties. Before departure from Port Moresby, Honorable Prime Minister interacted with the alumni of the Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation training courses from across the Pacific Island countries. These included senior government officials, leading professionals, and community leaders who have received training in India under ITEC. Since the last FIPIC summit in 2015, India has trained close to 1,000 officials from all countries in this region. India has also sent experts on long-term deputation to agencies in these countries to assess them across various areas of economic activity. Prime Minister will be in Sydney till Wednesday evening. During this period, this is just to give you a bit of an outline of what lies ahead of a Prime Minister's visit to Australia, to Sydney. He will hold bilateral meetings with the Honourable Prime Minister of Australia, Anthony Albanese, also call on Governor General David Hartley, and have meeting with Leader of the Opposition, Peter Dutton. Prime Minister Albanese will also host a dinner for Prime Minister, and during his upcoming 2 days of stay, Honorable Prime Minister will meet leading CEOs and also address the Indian community here. We will share more and detailed information on his visit, on his various engagements during his stay in Sydney over the course of a couple of days. I would stop here, and if there are questions, we'll try and answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Before I open the floor for questions, ground rules, please introduce yourself and the organization that you represent. Yeah, Siddhant, let me open with you. Microphone, please.
Hi, sir. Siddhant from Vion. How much is India's engagement with the Pacific countries important to India's vision of the Indo-Pacific? My first question. And second, when it comes to meeting with the Australian Prime Minister, how much focus will be the Khalistani extremism, a concern which India has raised publicly several times?
Okay. Yeah, Manish. Microphone.
Manish Chand, India Rights Network. So this FIPIC summit took place after a hiatus of 8 years. Following this summit, can we expect a more structured, more regular engagement? My second question is, Pacific Island countries have become an arena for geopolitical rivalry. At this summit meeting, what kind of views, what were the views of the leaders about India's role in the region? How did they look at it?
Okay, I'll take the last set of questions. Yeah, then we'll want more.
So, in addition to Manish's question,
If you introduce
from DD News,
Sir,
when we are talking about this FIPIC summit did take place after a hiatus, I would like to know what in the discussions from any subjects that have been taken up from the FIPIC 1 summit and FIPIC 2 summit, anything that has been carried forward?
You mean implemented? To be honest, a lot of issues that I'll let Foreign Secretary answer that, but a lot of issues, of course, have been, and today you saw the implementation announcements. So maybe, okay, you have a question? Or I'll take another round of it. I already have 5 questions. Just give me a second. So,
Let him
sir is saying, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm Vishal Monga from Aaj Just wanted to ask whether the Prime Minister would raise the issues of Hindu mandirs being attacked here in Australia. Will it be raised tomorrow or whenever he meets the Prime Minister of Australia?
Okay. Okay, so.
Thank you very much. In many ways, the questions that have been asked by my friends here, Siddhant's question on India's vision of the Indo-Pacific, Manish's, your question on more structured engagement after the period of hiatus. Our colleague from the DD News also referred to the hiatus and issues from the previous FIPIC summit. And the second set of questions relating to the scope of discussions during the next 48 hours of Honorable Prime Minister's stay here. Allow me to club these questions together, because although these questions are they touch upon individual aspects of cooperation between India and the countries of the Pacific Island, it is important to position them in the composite frame in which India looks at its engagement with these countries. So India's vision of the Indo-Pacific, for example, issues from the previous FIPIC summit, views of different leaders. In many ways, they all triangulate together in terms of India's partnership, extensive partnership engagement with individually with some of the countries, with most of the countries of the FIPIC, but also with FIPIC as a collective, as a regional collective. One important underlying element of India's vision of its engagement with the FIPIC partners is India regards the countries of the FIPIC as very important members of the countries of the Global South. Those countries of the Global South which, because of the geographical location that they are in, have certain priorities which are relating to their own developmental objectives, have certain concerns which emanate out of problems of climate change, out of issues of the sea level rise, marine pollution, which was significantly mentioned, overall capacity building activity in their societies and in their system, so that the developmental goals which they have set for their populations are met. And all this is done in a manner which doesn't cause increasing indebtedness of the society. 4, it is done preferably with a country which is reliable, which has a reputation of being very reliable, which they know would stay on for a long term. This would be the, I would say, overarching principles in which the composite frame of India's engagement, Prime Minister Modi's vision of India's engagement with FIPIC got structured ever since the first summit, which was organized in 2014, and thereafter the second one later, and this being the third one. If you also look at the set of concerns and priorities which the FIPIC countries have, you would also find in many of these areas there are commonalities, and I would even go a step further and say there are complementarities. Complementarities sometimes of capacity and needs, commonality also of the same challenges which India, since India has multiple agroclimatic zones, also faces similar challenges. So whether these are issues of climate change, health security, capacity development, and economic development. So when today the leaders of the FIPIC countries spoke at the third FIPIC summit, everybody was unanimous in regarding India as a reliable partner, which has democratic values, as a reliable partner with democratic values whose developmental template is such which doesn't structurally burden their economies, and at the same time is able to match very well with one, the priorities which they set, not what India sets, and two, that those priorities are harmonized with the kind of assistance package that India and our partners with FIPIC together structured. So for example, when the Honorable Prime Minister made the announcement for a super speciality cardiology hospital, this was a demand which came from that country in Fiji. At the same time, this is also pretty much a felt need of the region. And Honorable Prime Minister clearly announced that this would be built entirely from the grant amount which is to be given by Government of India. Similarly, the other 11 points in his action plan, which he announced today at the FIPIC summit, have also been structured based on the same principle, which is a need clearly articulated by the countries of the FIPIC and a need clearly appreciated by the Honorable Prime Minister, and combining the two, a path for their implementation and execution decided as such. In terms of periodic meetings of India and FIPIC countries, yes, there has been a bit of a hiatus, but we all know the challenges that the entire world has gone through in recent years, including particularly of pandemic. It is Prime Minister's clear vision and a clear priority that engagement with FIPIC countries would be regular, will be structured, and will take place with increasing frequency with individual countries of the FIPIC as also collectively with the region. Coming to the 2 points which were mentioned, one by Siddhant on the Khalistan issue and one by Mr. Munga on the question of the temples. Look, it is not correct for me to prejudge what would be discussed between the two leaders, Honorable Prime Minister of India and Honorable Prime Minister of Australia, in their meeting. We would, of course, brief you about those discussions later on after those meetings. I would only say what we have said about in the pre-visit briefing also, that all issues of bilateral engagement, including the issues which pertain to harmony in our society and the safety and security of our two societies, would be there, but it would be incorrect for me to prejudge the discussions between the two leaders, because it is for them to take this decision and structure their discussions.
Thank you, sir. I had a couple of hands. Yes, please.
Namaste, this is Anand Narsiman, CNN News 18. But first questions on the FIPIC aspect. The warmth, the kind of reception and of course breaking away from protocol that was extended to Prime Minister Narendra Modi, did that come as a surprise? And will that translate into support at multilateral forums like the WTO and the UN? How assured are we, given the pressure of America and of course the Chinese pressure?
That's a very loaded question.
Yeah, I have to ask that question because that's
Okay.
where it all hinges.
No, you're presuming. Go ahead.
Yeah.
What's the other
Sorry,
one?
I'm just, the other aspect, with respect to Australia, one of the aspects is how far has ECTA been productive? So is that going to be the common ground or key aspect which should be looked at? And the other aspect, final question, on the extremism aspect, it's the issue of secessionism which is not being understood. Will that be impressed upon beyond just the religious protection or protection of the Indian diaspora, the act of secessionism against India?
Okay. Yeah, Vishal.
So this is Vishal Pandey from Z News. There is a lot of news we are hearing that regarding the renaming of the Harris Park as Little India. What is the official stand over this? Will the formally renaming the name of Harris Park as Little India?
If you wait another 24, 48 hours. Anyway, so no other questions? So we'll close. Yeah? I'm sorry? Okay, I thought you were a camera person. Why don't you sit here? Okay, go ahead.
My camera is here.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm Jay from Australia today.
Okay.
I'll elaborate what Anand was saying. Is this secession movement of Khalistan kind of dangerous for Australia as it is for India? What are the security aspects or the sharing of information with Australia going on? And how important it is for Australia to understand where it is going? Thank you.
How important for Australia? Okay. So I'll close it. Thank you.
Look, let me just first take up the entire set of observations, I would say, translated into questions on different aspects relating to upcoming discussions between the two leaders. I've clearly mentioned to you that it would be not correct for me not to prejudge in any way what the two leaders discuss. But I have also mentioned to you that insofar as questions relating to harmony and safety and security of our two societies, they have always been discussed, periodically been discussed between the two systems. How those talks are positioned between the two leaders, we will brief you in detail after those talks are over, so that you can not attach assumption to your questions, but rather have evidence of what happens. That would be far more specific in terms of that element of your observation. On your question relating to surprise on the welcome, whether the surprise and sentiment translates into something as if it's a transaction, which surprise and sentiment are related intrinsically in a very different way compared to how sentiment and other aspect is related, which you mentioned. I think I would put it slightly differently. I think it's a question of the frame of assumption. There is a frame of assumption that surprise and sentiment was for a purpose. There is another frame which takes surprise and sentiment as absolute elements of a relationship between the two society, of a relationship between the leaders. And then the productive nature of that relationship, which translates into specific elements of cooperation. I think the welcome that the Honorable Prime Minister was accorded in Papua New Guinea, the warmest of the sentiments that was shown not just by the Honorable Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, who broke all protocol, came to the airport, welcomed Honorable Prime Minister, provided the ceremonial 19-gun salute, but also by the sense which we got in the summit was of a deep-rooted, intuitive affinity that was displayed towards the Prime Minister. And such expression of warmth towards the Honorable Prime Minister, which was also manifested in the highest order that Papua New Guinea accorded to the Honorable Prime Minister, the Prime Minister of Fiji accorded to the Honorable Prime Minister on behalf of the Fijian President. It showed something which is which actually displays to you the key element of people-to-people relationship, which is intrinsic element of the composite frame in which India and FIPIC cooperate. Prime Minister's approach to FIPIC, his vision of FIPIC, is of an absolutely positive agenda whose central anchor is the development, is the prosperity of the two society, is to deepen value-based partnership between India and the countries of the FIPIC. There is a certain amount of bilateral frame in which it operates, much as your question would allude to an externality to it. I would say that the Honorable Prime Minister's vision of FIPIC, partnership with FIPIC, engagement with FIPIC, is centrally rooted in the prosperity of the people, which then translates into an extensive development agenda and an engagement which is rooted in different elements of economic cooperation. I listed 12 elements of this. If you flesh them out into different buckets, you will find there is a strong bucket of capacity engagement. There is another category which strongly deals with their health security needs. You would all perhaps recall, although with time public memory is fleeting, that during the pandemic, during the COVID pandemic, India was one of the first countries which extended extensive vaccine and other related assistance to Pacific. And that was simply because our approach to development is humanity-centric, human-centric, not for the want of any transactional gain that you perhaps insinuated in your question. So I think Prime Minister's vision of FIPIC is rooted in that fundamental sense of humanity, people-centricity, and that was clearly a display during this particular summit and was deeply appreciated across the FIPIC summit, and pretty much the sense which we got from every speech that was made at today's summit. Thank you. Yeah. Again, in terms of larger frame of economic cooperation between India and Australia, ECTA in particular, and progress from ECTA to Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement. As I said, ECTA, as you know, has only been in existence not for too long. So, and the discussions are already underway between the two commerce ministries on how to progress from ECTA to the next step. Clearly, again, it's not, it is rather inappropriate for me to see how leaders would take stock of how the progress has been in, under the ECTA and the next steps. But clearly,